Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you're all well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, let's get this rolling. So we have in the chat. Oh, let's turn off these notifications. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for asking, Cario. I'm doing okay. Alhamdulillah. A little tired at the end of the day as always, but I'm doing okay. Thank you so much. And Assalamu alaikum, Dragon Light. Hope you're well. Okay, let me get my presentation up and then I will show you what I have for today. All right, okay. So my bit of contemplation that I want to share today concerns Qarun. So most of us should be familiar with the story of Qarun in the Qur'an, but I'm going to go through it anyway, because it warrants going through for what we're going to discuss today. So the main part of the story, it's given in Surah Al-Qasas, Surah 28 in the Qur'an. So here's the first part of it. It says, إِنَّ قَارُونَ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمِ مُوسَى فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ. Indeed, Qarun was from the people of Musa, but he tyrannized them, he oppressed them. He sort of like, did one over them. Okay. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحَهُ لَتَنُوءَ بِالْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ. And we gave him of the treasures whose keys would burden a band of strong men. So he had so much wealth, so much treasures, that just the keys that he used to lock it all up with, they would be, you need a strong group of people to carry the keys, just the keys, which seems kind of strange. It also seems a bit paranoid, right? That you would have, if you need that many keys, that means you've put all your wealth in so many different sort of like boxes, safety boxes, right? So it's a lot of wealth, but also maybe perhaps too many keys. You could end up having just one huge vault with one key. But this is what we have here. This is what it says, that just the keys were heavy, so heavy that you need a group of strong young men to carry them. And that could tell you something about the psychology. Also maybe tells you something about how the keys used to be in the past, right? I remember, seeing pictures of the old key of the Kaaba. They're huge, right? These were like the keys in the past for some things. Used to be huge, not like these small keys that we have now. Anyway, then what happened is قَالَ لَهُ قَوْمُهُ, when his people said to him, لَا تَفْرَحْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْفَرِحِينَ. Do not exalt. Indeed, Allah does not like the exultant, the farihin, right? Now, farah can just mean being happy, right? So we have a verse in the Qur'an, قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا, right? Tell them that in the mercy of Allah and the bounty of Allah, in that let people rejoice, let them show their happiness, right? But here, the connotation of farah here is this kind of like being happy at the expense of others, right? Sort of like exaltation over others, this pridefulness over others. So you're happy with something that you have that other people don't have, and you're sort of like being happy in that sort of like way, right? To put it in sort of like the most sort of a silly way to say it, but how kids would say, to another child, nah, I've got this, you don't have it, that sort of thing, right? That sort of like kind of happiness, which is more at the expense of others, right? It's prideful in that sort of way. But the key thing about here, very important, is to know that he belonged to Musa's people. He was one of Musa's people. He was one of the Israelites, okay? And he oppressed them, it says here, right? فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ قَارُونَ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمِ مُوسَى فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ وَآتَيْنَاهُ, and we gave him from the treasures. So it's not clear here, but did the treasures come before or after he was sort of like oppressive over them, right? Which way around was it first? Is it that, you could read the verses saying that he tyrannized them, and we had given him of the treasures that which would burden a strong group of people, right? Or could it be that afterwards is how he got his wealth? Okay, after, due to some sort of tyranny upon them, is how he was then able to get his wealth. Okay, this is important because oppression, this kind of baghi, you could say that normally it's associated with power, right? Not simply possession of money. You just having a lot of money doesn't cause you to be oppressive or to do baghi against others, but perhaps having a lot of money will let you be able to do that, right? Or perhaps you got your money due to baghi against others. So some things to think about. There's going to be a lot more questions here. I have here more questions than answers in what I'm going to be presenting today. So that's what happened. And then it says, and then they kept on advising him. These people from the Qawm of Musa around him kept advising him. They said also, وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ, and seek through that which Allah has given you the home or the abode of the hereafter. And this will come up at the end after the story is concluded. There's a very key verse about salvation. I think I mentioned that here, right? The story of Qarun, and a key verse which is about salvation. One of my go-to verses, which I talk about when I talk about salvation. I'll bring it up. It comes at the end of this story. So they're telling him to seek the dar of the akhirah. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, but also don't forget your share of this world. Don't make yourself be like a beggar or poorly or whatever, right? Look after yourself in this world too. وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ, and do good, right? Do ihsan, just as Allah has done ihsan towards you. وَلَا تَبْغِي الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and don't seek to cause fasad, corruption in the earth. Desire not corruption in the land, right? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُفْسِدِينَ, truly Allah does not love those who are corrupters. Okay, so we have two things here back to back, right? From whom God does not love, right? Inna Allah la yuhibbul farihin. God does not love the exultant, and God does not love the corrupters. Okay. Then it continues. Qala, he responds. What's his response to all of this? Okay, so his response to being told to do good, to seek the akhirah, that he shouldn't be boastful over others. Don't be exultant of all of that. What's his response, right? It's really like a non-response. He doesn't actually respond to any of that, right? He says, قَالَ إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ عِنْدِي. He said, I was only given it because of knowledge I have, right? So he just says how he in the face of all of that's being said, right, which had nothing to do with how he got it, he says, yeah, but I got it due to my own knowledge. So he's almost saying that I don't have to do any of that because nobody gave it to me, right? Nobody gave it to me. I got it from my own knowledge. And that's sort of like almost like a rebuttal to what they're saying to him. They're saying, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. Be good as Allah has been good to you by giving you wealth, right? And he's saying, no, Allah didn't give it to me, basically. I got it because of knowledge that I have in my own self, right? And we'll come to that in a minute because it touches on the whole idea of, our wealth and sustenance. Where does it come from? And then the verse continues. Now, this is Allah speaking here. أَوَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَهْلَكَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنَ الْقُرُونِ مَنْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُ قُوَّةً وَأَكْثَرُ جَمْعًا. Did he not know that Allah had destroyed before him of generations those who were greater than him in power and greater in accumulation of wealth? And it says, وَأَكْثَرُ جَمْعًا وَلَا يُسْأَلْ عَنْ ذُنُوبِهِمُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. And the criminals, the mujrimun, and remember we've done a number of streams about ijram, what it is. The mujrimun are not going to be asked about their sins, right? And I've mentioned before, okay, why does the Qur'an not have إن الله لا يحب المجرمين, even though they seem recurrently in the Quran to be like the damned sect, just as the people of Taqwa are the saved sect. And I've mentioned before that part of it is because the Ijram includes the Mufsideen anyway. So the Mufsidun and the Zalimun, therefore the Mujrimun are they have those qualities as well. Right? Ijram includes fasad, right? And then next verse, فخرج, then what happened? So that's the setup. What happened after that? فخرج على قومه في زينته. So he came out before his people in his adornments, dressed up, with all his gold and glitter, wearing jewels or whatever. قال الذين يريدون الحياة الدنيا يا ليت لنا مثل ما أوتي قارون إنه لذو حظ عظيم. Those who desired the worldly life said, "Oh, would that we had like that, like what was given to Qarun. Indeed, he is of great fortune. He is of great fortune." وقال الذين أوتوا العلم ويلكم ثواب الله خير. But those who had been given knowledge said, "Woe to you, the reward of Allah is better for he who has faith and does righteousness, and none are granted it except the patient." Now we're talking about the patient, right? And remember, Allah loves the patient. And it should be noted that the people speaking here are not the same who were advising before. Those who are advising were they're not being described as people who had knowledge. Okay, it's just what they said, right? إذ قال له قومه, it's just the people. His people told him this. But now we have a subgroup among those people, those who are given knowledge. Where is it? وقال الذين أوتوا العلم, and those who had knowledge said, ويلكم ثواب الله خير. They said, "Woe to you, the reward of Allah is better for he who has faith and does righteousness, and none are granted it except the patient." And then what happened? We know, فَخَسَفَنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ. And so we caused the earth to swallow him and his home. فَمَا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ فِئَةٍ يَنْصُرُونَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُنْتَصِرِينَ. And there was for him no company to aid him, no people, no group who could aid him other than Allah, nor was he of those who could defend themselves. And this seems to indicate that he had a legion with him, right? They had many fi'at with him, but none of them could help him, none of them could save him, right? And that's generally the case, right? People who have a lot of wealth, they will usually have a lot of people orbiting around them, right? Orbiting around them, trying to gain wealth from them. So he had different fi'at, even if you would say that these were people who were dealing with his businesses or whatever, but there would be a lot around him and none could help him. Okay? And then, of course, what happens? وَأَصْبَحَ الَّذِينَ تَمَنَّوْا مَكَانَهُ بِالْأَمْسِ. And those who had wished for his position the previous day began to say, يَقُولُونَ وَيْكَأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ وَيَقْدِرُ. Oh, how Allah extends provision to whom He wills of His servants and restricts it. وَيَقْدِرُ لَوْلَا أَنْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا لَخَسَفَ بِنَا. If not that Allah had conferred favor on us, He would have caused us to be swallowed up as well. And that's the idea being that since they wanted to be like Him, and they were saying, we wish we were like Him, we'd be like Him, meaning we would do His actions as well. So in a way, they would be deserving of the same fate that befell him, just because they hadn't been given it. But he had been given it, yet their intentions, what was in their hearts, were the same. So due to not having been given it, that favor, if Allah had not favored us, and the favor in this case would be Allah not giving them such wealth, because if they had been given such wealth, they would have been acting like him. Okay, and then they would have been swallowed up as well. And then lastly say, وَيْكَأَنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Oh, how the ungrateful, really, kafirun means ungrateful, do not succeed. And then we have that key verse. I'll say it first before I get back to the key verse after all of this. So recall at the beginning, he was being told to seek the dar of the akhirah, the abode of the hereafter. And here, the next verse we have a very key verse, which is it's a go-to to remember if you want to have a quick hand evidence that that salvation is by your deeds, right? And taqwa. Says here, تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا. That is the home of the hereafter. We assign it, we give it to those who do not desire exaltedness, so to be grand upon the earth, nor corruption. Right? So just not wanting to be exaltant upon the earth, nor wanting to spread corruption on the earth, that is enough to give you salvation. That is enough to give you salvation. That runs towards the rest of what the Qur'an says, which is, if you stay away from the major sins, right, Allah will forgive you all your minor sins. It's the same idea, right? If you stay away from all the major sins, Allah will forgive you all of your sins, and you will enter mudkhalan kareem, as the verse says, enter into a blessed or honorable entering into Jannah, right? And the ending of that says وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, and the final the final outcome is for the people of taqwa, right? And that again lets you know the idea that taqwa is the antithesis of these sort of things, right? Fasad, causing harm, these sort of things. Taqwa is the opposite way from that, and that not being a person of exaltation upon the earth, nor spreading corruption on the earth, that's part of taqwa. Okay. But let's get back to the story. Okay, so what do we know about? What are the takeaways from the story of Qarun? First of all, he was an Israelite from Musa's own people. He came to be incredibly rich. Okay, when is unclear. When did he become rich? We don't know. But certainly it seems after Egypt. Right, this seems to have happened. He was certainly rich after Egypt. Was he rich back in Egypt before Exodus? We're not sure. His wealth made him, boastful and prideful, and he wasn't just rich, but did baghi against them, against his own people. Right. So that was one of the first things mentioned about him. إن قارون كان من قوم موسى فبغى عليهم. So he did baghi, or oppression or tyranny towards them. And we're going to see later what that could mean. His response to being encouraged to do good, ihsan, is a non-response, essentially saying, why should I when I got this all myself? Next, it's implied he engaged in fasad and was of the mujrimeen, right? And that, remember when we said the ijram is sort of like trying to defraud the truth as well, that sort of thing. And that's why he was saying basically that, I got this from my own way. Next thing, his wealth came from some knowledge, he says. That's what he claims. So he claims it came from some sort of knowledge that he had. And the Quran actually doesn't deny it. It doesn't deny that he had some sort of knowledge through it. Because of course, he's not going to say that without any justification. Just like now when people who are wealthy, or who they studied hard, they got high marks, and they got a fantastic job which gives them a lot of money, they all say, I got this from knowledge which I had. Okay, there's going to be something which Qarun had, which he isn't able to add to, in his mind, attribute all of his success to that. Okay, that his wealth goes back to that. So the Quran doesn't say no, it didn't come from your knowledge, it came from Allah alone. It doesn't say that. If you go back to that verse, right? قال إنما أتيته على علم عندي. He says, I only got it out of knowledge which I had. The verse doesn't really refute that idea itself. It just says, did he not know that Allah had destroyed before him of generations those who were greater than him in power and greater in accumulation of wealth? That's what it says. And then it says, the mujrimun do not prosper, right? They will not be asked about their sins. So this is sort of an ijram. Saying this is a sort of ijram, to say that I only got it from my own wealth. But where does it come from? Well, if we said that he has some sort of knowledge, could it be something like now, right? Like now, how people would say, they can get incredibly wealthy by just having the right piece of information, right? Like insider trading. That's why I put, in the thumbnail, Donald Trump, and and his wealth has grown huge amounts during his presidency, because him and those around him are doing a lot of insider trading, right? They have information beforehand, they trade using that. His son, what's his name, Barron or something, is also doing a lot of insider trading, making a lot of money by knowing what policies are going to be enacted. Okay, so having this some knowledge can bring about that kind of wealth. His advisors saw his wealth as God doing ihsan to him. Okay, but was it? Okay, these are just questions. Was his incredible amount of wealth the result of God be doing ihsan to him, or was his wealth acquired in a haram way? Like we said, like this kind of like insider trading or these sort of things. How did he acquire his wealth? Right? Outwardly, right, they are advising him because they see he has a lot of wealth, and they say, okay, then Allah gave you that wealth. But is that how we're going to attribute it to Allah giving it to him? Right? When somebody makes a huge amount of wealth through haram means, do we say that Allah gave him that wealth? Is that a correct way of phrasing that? Seeing the world, right? That anybody who has wealth in any sort of way, in any corrupt way, we say that Allah did ihsan to him. He did good to him. No, I mean this is an acquiring of evil deeds, really, right? When you gain wealth in that sort of way, people make a lot of wealth out of extortionate riba and interest, right? Not just, but riba, compound interest. Do we say that Allah has done ihsan to them? No, we wouldn't say that, would we? Lastly, we do not know if Musa was still alive during this incident. We don't know if Musa was still, but this seems to be after the Exodus, right? This seems to be after the Exodus, but we're not sure. Okay, so why am I talking about this, and what did I call this stream? The sellout. Well, because very interestingly enough, there's a strong connection between Qarun and Fir'aun and Haman, right? Qarun seems to be in the close circle of Fir'aun, despite him being from Musa's people, from the Israelites. Okay, so we have this verse, for example, وقارون وفرعون وهامان ولقد جاءهم موسى بالبينات فاستكبروا في الأرض وما كانوا سابقين. And we destroyed beforehand Qarun and Fir'aun and Haman. Why are they put together? And why is it said that Musa was sent to them with the bayinat? Why was Musa being sent to Fir'aun and Haman? And he was being sent to Fir'aun, that's obvious. He's been sent to Haman, that's obvious. But being sent to Qarun doesn't make as much sense, right? Doesn't make as much sense. Musa's original being sent, he was being sent to Fir'aun to take his people out of Egypt, right? That let my people go. Okay, so why was he sent? So how is it that Qarun, an Israelite from Musa's own people, is grouped with Fir'aun and his primary sort of minister Haman? So what relationship did they have such that when Musa arrived, Qarun was already with them, right? Qarun seems to have been on their side already with them. He was from Musa's people, but he was in with their oppressors. He was with those who had enslaved them. Okay, so why is that? Did he already have wealth and prominence? And was he part of Fir'aun's council, his mala, right, his outer council? So we seem to have this situation where this incredibly wealthy Israelite, right, is on the side of Fir'aun against the rest of the Israelites who are enslaved, and against Musa when he comes. Okay, we have this one as well. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا وَسُلْطَانٍ مُبِينٍ إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَقَارُونَ. And we did certainly send Moses with our signs and a clear authority to Fir'aun, Haman, and Qarun, right? But they said, all of them, right? They said he is a magician and a liar. So that's including Qarun. And when he brought them the truth from us, they said, right? This includes Qarun. Kill the sons of those who have faith with him and keep their women alive. But the plan of the kafirun is not except in error. So this is incredible, right? why would Musa be sent to Qarun, first of all? Musa's mission was to get Fir'aun to release the Israelites. So this can only mean that Qarun, just like Haman, also had a say or influence in the enslavement of the Israelites, right? He had a say in the enslavement of the Israelites, because he could have been one of those who helped to release them. He was keeping them in bondage as well. Which, does that tell us that Qarun maybe made his wealth by helping to enslave his own people, right, to Fir'aun, that he sold out the Israelites to Fir'aun in order, and that was the beginning of his wealth, perhaps, right? But it's incredible here that he's saying that, we could kill them. So here Qarun is even shown as saying that the Israelite sons should be killed. I mean, these are his own people, right? These are his own nation, the Israelites. And he's saying, together with Haman, right, and Fir'aun, let's kill the sons of the Israelites and keep their women. Okay. So is this the baghi which is mentioned earlier in the story, in the very first verses we looked at, that Qarun was from the people of Musa, فَبَغَى عَلَيْهِمْ. Is this the baghi where he encouraged the killing of the sons and taking of their women? Let's say it is. If that is so, and even if you don't call that the baghi mentioned in that verse, it is indeed so that it happened. How is Qarun ultimately still accepted to be among the Israelites later, right? Because it seems that he was still among the Israelites later. Okay, why is he still there? Why was Qarun, why wasn't he killed basically later, right, by the Israelites themselves as a traitor? Okay, and like I said, why is Qarun even threatened by? Why is he standing against Musa and with Fir'aun and with Haman and with that establishment? Okay, did it constitute a disruption to how he made his money? Okay, did he make his money selling out his people to slavery at the hands of Fir'aun? If so as well, you have a sort of like almost a contradiction of ends, because killing the boys would be counterproductive to that. If you were involved in the slave trade, you don't kill the boys, right? So basically questions, right? So this is really giving more questions than answers. Did Qarun's wealth ultimately come from a connection with Fir'aun? Is this an example of government with in cahoots with corporations and wealth and wealthy, right? Is this a government wealthy alliance where Fir'aun, of course, represents the sovereign, and Qarun is a wealthy person, and so you have that ancient alliance between those in power and the wealthy. Okay, and why did he leave with Musa, right? With Musa and the rest of the Israelites? If Qarun was really in cahoots with Fir'aun and thing, why it seems like he wasn't drowned with Fir'aun, right? It was later that his home was swallowed up, but he didn't drown. So he wasn't with Fir'aun when Fir'aun drowned. He wasn't with Fir'aun, and it seems Haman as well when they were both drowned. He didn't go out chasing the Israelites. It seems like he was with Musa and escaped, right? Escaped through the parting of the sea. And if that's the case, and he had the wealth beforehand while he was in Egypt, how did he get his wealth out? Did he take it with them? I mean, the Quran seems to mention that there were few, right? That in هؤلاء شرذمة قليلون. These are just a few people, right? The Israelites, but that could just be trying to encourage. It could be just Fir'aun trying to encourage his people to go out after them. Anyway, so some closing remarks. The traditional focus is on, the story is usually on greed, arrogance, and wealth. But when you collect all of the Quranic references together, Qarun begins to look less like merely a rich individual and more like a member of the ruling establishment. So an elite figure whose economic interests were intertwined with Fir'aun's political power. So perhaps some other people have mentioned this. I would imagine that maybe Sam Gerrans, because he did the whole God protocol, and he, from what I know, I haven't read or looked at much of his stuff, but from what I know, he discusses these sort of things, these sort of like topics. But in any case, perhaps others have mentioned, you have this sort of like triad of Fir'aun, the political power, the sovereign, and Haman, who is like the administrative, the bureaucratical power. And then you have Qarun, an economic power, right? And these three were sort of like in cahoots. And the Quran, when it mentions all three, it invokes sort of those three aspects. So the knowledge of Qarun probably isn't business acumen, right? It isn't knowledge of trade, right? It could very well just include privileged access and political connections, control of resources, or other advantages disguised as personal merit. The Qarun leaves the nature of the knowledge that deliberately vague. Okay, so Qarun is from Bani Israel. He oppressed Bani Israel. He is closely associated with Pharaoh's regime, and he possesses extraordinary wealth, and he opposes Musa. And in all of those ways, he seems, a huge sellout to his people. Okay, that's basically it. That's all I wanted to present about today. Now, I have some people backstage. Assalamu alaikum. I'll bring you on in a minute. A few questions first, and then I'll bring on Sam. I can see you here. Good to have you back again. Let me just check quickly the chat. Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to get into my political experience since the last time, but couldn't mention at the time. No problem. Assalamu alaikum, Abdul Nasir. Hope you're well. So the Quran isn't actually against him claiming his power from his knowledge, but instead against him using power to spread fasad. Well, he's definitely trying to spread fasad, it seems, right? I mean, he's saying to kill the children of the Israelites and take their women. So he was definitely doing that. Polymarket is under suspicion because many users seem like politicians using inside information to bet for a lot of money. Yeah. Is Qarun doomed to hell? Does the Quran imply this? Yeah, well, it certainly does. I mean, he is implies that he's from the mujrimeen, from the mufsideen, and of course he tried to have his people killed, right? Obviously, I suppose that means. All right. All right, so let me bring on. I have a few people backstage. A few questions. Let me bring on first. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm back with a few questions. It was like really fun talking to you last time.
No problem.
So I had one question, and I have a friend, right? And he keeps. So before that, I have to ask you the question: what are your opinions on like cutting off your parents or your siblings, like your brothers or sisters, off? Because I have this friend, and he wanted me to ask you this question. And one of his parents keeps trying to like ruin his life in like subtle ways, and he's at his wit's end, and he doesn't know what to do. So what do you think the Quran says, or what's your opinion on the topic?
It's interesting. The whole thing about cutting off your relationship with parents or with relatives and stuff. It's not as emphasized as in the traditional Islam it seems to be. I mean, from what I just now just put in my mind, I've thought about it a little bit, but I haven't investigated it fully. The Quran does mention these sort of things a little bit, right? So it talks about it talks in a blameworthy way of تقطع أرحامكم, right? That if we were to put you in charge and in earth, would you cut your relations, right? Let me pull out the verse for that. وتقطع, it's in Surah Muhammad. Yeah, so it says فهل عسيتم إن توليتم أن تفسدوا في الأرض وتقطعوا أرحامكم. So would you perhaps, if you turned away from this message, cause corruption on the earth and sever your ties of relationships. And it says, أولئك الذين لعنهم الله فأصمهم وأعمى أبصارهم. Those are, those are the ones whom Allah has cursed, and so He has deafened them and blinded their vision. Now, when it says turned away, some people take that to mean, take leadership, like wilaya. Well, it says فَهَلْ عَسَيْتُمْ إِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ. تَوَلَّيْتُم meaning to take, to take charge, right? To be in a position of power, wilaya, right? Or it could mean to turn away from, right? وَلَّيْتُم مُدْبِرِينَ, to turn your back on something. But it seems this is one of the things where it seems it's much more emphasized in traditional Islam and in hadiths about cutting off your family relations. It's mentioned in the Quran, but not as much, right? And it's not shown as. I mean, here of course this verse says that combined with fasad on the earth, right, it will cause the curse of Allah, right? But it's not something which is just directed only to cutting off family ties and relationships. Generally, I think you just have to use your common sense, right? What I would advise for somebody in that sort of situation is, try as best you can to maintain some sort of a relationship, right? Don't, cut off completely, but protect yourself from these sort of like toxic relationships, or people, even parents or people like that who are trying to like ruin your life. Then definitely try to have some distance, right? I mean, it's not. I don't think it's a wise thing to just completely cut yourself off from family members.
Hmm.
Right. And what does that even mean when you say, I'm going to cut myself off from? It means that you tell them that's it. I don't want anything to do. I'm not going to see you again. I'm not going to call you. You say that to them in their faces, and then you just leave and you never look back. You change your address. You change your phone number. You do. Is that what it means? I don't think so. I think for the most part, people will just keep their distance, right, a little bit, and communicate, sporadically every once in a while, check on each other. But you'll find really in the end, you can have some good friends in life, but your families are the ones who are going to be there towards the end, right?
I'm of like the personal opinion that you shouldn't really be kind or virtuous to a person that's trying to hurt you, because that is weakness, and that allows the person to hurt you more, right? And even if that person is your parent, uh, my bad. But so that's what my personal thinking is. But yeah.
Well, you can protect yourself, right? You can do good to them and protect yourself from their hurt. But the Quran does say, that idfa billati hiya ahsan as-sayyi'ah. Respond to evil with that which is best, right? So people who are hurting you, who are doing a lot of harm to you, it is actually commendable thing to do good back to them, right? You can protect yourself from the harm that they are trying to do to you, but you can still do good to them, and eventually that causes a change. Unless the person is completely dead inside, it causes a change, right, in the other person. If you are patient. But if you're somebody who does it a few times and then gets frustrated and said no, and then it's not going to have the same effect.
Me and my friend, we were having a back and forth, and he was telling me that all the mainstream advice he's got is that you should probably try to be kind and try to be patient and work it out. But he's sometimes the person who's abusing you, he uses that to his advantage, because he knows you're not going to completely cut them off, and then he uses that to hurt you more. And my only advice to him was
definitely in that sort of case, no. Like I said, you protect yourself from that, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't understand what practically speaking, what does that look like, right? What does that look like? Saying being nice and patient, being patient with them or kind to them is going to be used against you. Like how?
I have personally never experienced it, but my friend was trying to ask me this question.
Yeah, I'm talking about for your friend, what happened, what exactly sort of things happened. What does he have an example that he's shared with you where that was used against him?
Yes, he has, but I don't really want to say it on stream right now. I can
Okay.
talk to you about this privately, but yeah, he's told me multiple examples of one of the parents like getting under his skin and trying to ruin his like future by like doing some things, and yeah.
Okay. Well, like I said, I mean, you definitely want to protect yourself from that, right?
Yeah,
That will be a priority.
yeah,
100% that will be a priority. You don't want to let somebody ruin you in that sort of way. But after that, when you're safe from their harm, protect yourself from their harm, then yeah, I mean, what's the point of cutting yourself off from them? Not
yeah,
much, right?
yeah. Also, one last thing I wanted to say is there a way for you to like announce your plan on like doing a stream like a day in advance? Because I always miss your streams, and like I just refreshed my YouTube and I saw you streaming and I joined in.
All right, yeah. I mean, I'll try to do it because I just sort of like do it on the day. Decide what I'm going to be talking about on the day. But maybe I'll try to make a bit, you know, uh,
Yeah,
set them up in advance, like a day before or something.
yeah,
I'll try to do that from now on because I really should be doing that, to be honest.
yeah. Just you could just like leave a tweet on Twitter or something like at the beginning of the day, right?
Mm.
So that could work. Anyways, that's all from me. Thanks a lot.
All right, brilliant. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much for coming.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum. All right. Let's bring on. Sam, I'll bring you on in after Tahsin, if you don't mind, because Tahsin haven't had them on for quite a while. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello?
Hello, how you doing?
Wait. I don't think I'm hearing you. Wait.
You can't hear me? No. Disappeared. Let's give him a second. And we have it just Broly saying, don't be a sellout to your own people. Do not side with the oppressive. Awliya. To seem like a jahil, no money worth oppressing your people. Exactly. That is true. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Excellent.
Yeah. I actually have a couple questions as well. From what I understand from this stream, what was it? The person like Qarun, he was like a wealthy person, right? He had all this wealth, and he thought he only was given this wealth as knowledge. So he did probably believe in God, in a way, right?
Yeah, he almost certainly believed in God. I mean, it's not mentioned, but there's very few in the Quran who are portrayed as not believing in God, right? In terms of the existence of God, he almost certainly did. I mean, he was one of Banu Israel, right? He's one of the Israelites, so it seems like he probably did believe in God. I mean, I've heard that the Bible, or biblically, the Israelites before the Torah, before Musa took them out of Egypt, and they got before that, they were just idolaters. They were just idolaters like everybody else, right?
Yes.
So that they weren't sort of like believers in God so much, which is why they fell into worship of the golden calf so easily, right? That they were able to say, this is your God and the God of Musa, but he forgot, right? So you could make the argument that no, they weren't people who had any real didn't have a higher thought or belief of God in that sort of way, right?
Yes.
For them, they believed in God, but they weren't sure. They didn't know anything about him.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I wanted to talk about it, like what was it? An issue that I had, right? Really, this is the first time I even seeing this, right? Like I have like a autism ADHD. I have very like difficult like social interactions sometimes, and I sometimes like get interested into topics like this, and sometimes I'm not interested. I'm like very hyper impulse. I have a lot of impulse and stuff. So sometimes I can get interested in the Qur'an and like to hear recitation, and sometimes I feel like it's always sometimes repetitive. So then it's like it's not getting to me, and sometimes I do. It's like coming back and forth.
Yeah.
And for me, it's almost like how I actually feel connected to the Quran is almost like it feels like sometimes I feel connected, and sometimes I don't feel connected, and I just take a rest and do something else.
I think that's everybody, right?
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everybody's like that.
I try to basically take much as well, and sometimes I've had bad periods where I don't know, I just had a bad day, then I just probably shut myself off. And then sometimes when I have a good day, I feel so interested. I want to discover more and stuff.
Yeah.
That's literally me sometimes as well. I always like going diving a lot into history, Islamic history, and I always find it fascinating to discover like how the Prophet lived and all this, the Sahabas, and how everything in general. It always fascinates me because it's interesting, right? I find it very much.
It is interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunately not much of it. The details of a lot of it isn't very sure. It's not on sure ground, right?
No.
So
Yeah.
the general gist is, but
Mm.
the details of how he lived his life or the details of
Yeah.
Sahaba, a lot of it isn't sure knowledge, to be honest.
Yeah. I think most of us do, but I'm just like, when it's like a lot of these details, like that are, they can, like, when I discover a lot of things like the Shia and Sunni split in YouTube now. I think in these trends nowadays, you like see like a lot of division in the Muslim Ummah, and a lot of like hate coming up towards the Shias, especially, which I find from the Sunnis. And
Yeah.
then I always basically think unity should be more like suitable, and not really like this division, like hating on differences and stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's not right at all. It's irrelevant, and some people deliberately want disunity in a way, so that just because they're told so, because they don't like the Shias and stuff. You can see that like some among our ummah can be sellouts in some way, even though they can promote unity, and it's
Yeah.
go against like the West and the Zionists and all those people.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, what was that? Imam, what's his name? The one who works for Yaqeen Institute, or worked with them anyway, and he released that series on Shia Islam and stuff, and he did it, during this time where the U.S. is attacking Iran. I thought that was just atrocious because it was also very bad. It was like it was a terrible portrayal of Shiism. Completely train wreck. I mean, it's been deleted since, right? Thank God
Yeah.
for that. Umar Suleiman, right? The
Yeah.
CEO or the founder of Yaqeen Institute.
Yeah.
He actually, I think he stepped in and got that removed because it was just so bad. But I think that's an example of selling out. That now when you want to flame this hatred and negative portrayal of Shia Islam and Shiism at the time where they're being attacked in this sort of way, right? I thought that was terrible.
Yeah. I agree. It's terrible. I mean, when you actually like have the opportunity to like promote unity and just settle your differences, I think it's terrible. Like, come on, it's just immature to just discuss about this. Like saying the Shias do this and that and accusing them of stuff it isn't important really. That's not really important. The important thing is to like reunite, because there's so much injustice in this world, like the example you talked about in Gaza, Sudan, Lebanon, and etc. And I think the Ummah needs to basically stay connected that way, right? They cannot just settle on these like small stuff. At least I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I have a question as well. About like this. I always basically think about this as well, right? Like certain like verses, like there's like the discussion of like these satanic verses, right? I've looked
Yeah.
up like few videos of that, and I don't seem to basically understand like what like some like ex-Muslims trying to try to find like these contradictions in the Quran, right?
Yeah.
Then they bring up these like satanic verses saying that some verses were put out of the Quran, or like they weren't there or something. I don't realistically understand their argument. It's almost like a refutal against one.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, I mean, I did do a stream about the satanic verses, argument and all of that, and basically that it's a story that was later. It seems to be just created later. I don't know, but they try to pin it as an explanation of a verse of the Quran. They try to pin it on a verse in Surah Al-Hajj, verse 52, and they say that this satanic verses incident occurred, and this verse in the Quran is proof of it. And what is the story, the satanic verses story? It's basically that the Prophet Muhammad wanted to he wanted to compromise a little bit with the Meccans, right? So he praised. So in a certain verses in Surah An-Najm, while he was reciting Surah An-Najm, Shaitan came in and brought three different, or a few other verses which were not part of the actual revelation. So Shaitan was able to smuggle in some verses which are not part of the Quran into the Quran, and the Prophet recited them, and these verses were praising some of the Meccan idols, right? And then later on, after that, Jibreel comes down and says, no, these verses were thrown in by Shaitan, and here are the correct verses, right? So that's the story. And they take it from they look at these verses in Surah Al-Hajj as basically saying that this is what happened. Okay, so the verse in Surah Al-Hajj says, وما أرسلنا من قبلك من رسول ولا نبي إلا إذا تمنى ألقى الشيطان في أمنيته. And we did not send before you any messenger or prophet except that when he wished, or when he hoped, tamanna, Shaitan threw into his wish or hope something. He threw into his wish or hope. But then Allah abolishes that which Shaitan throws in, and Allah makes firm or precise His own verses. Allah is knowing and wise, right? So they say that this basically the satanic verses is happened, and this verse is proof that it happened as well. But it makes no sense with it, because this verse is basically saying that this happened to all prophets. Every prophet had this. So did every prophet have satanic verses? Did every prophet and messenger have satanic verses? No, right? We don't hear about this anywhere else. Secondly, the idea is in the satanic verses stories that Shaitan threw into the recitation, but this verse says that Shaitan throws into the wishes of the prophet, into what the prophet wished. That tamanna. Shaitan fi umniyati. Allah, Shaitan throws into that which he hoped or wished for. Okay, and then the verse after that actually explains or shows that the thing in which Shaitan is throwing is not even in the prophet himself; it's in the hearts of his listeners. It's in the hearts of his listeners, which is why the next verse says, لِيَجْعَلَ مَا يُلْقِي الشَّيْطَانِ فِتْنَةٌ لِلَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَرَضٌ. So that Allah can make what Shaitan has thrown a fitna, a tribulation, in the hearts of those who have diseases in their hearts. So that means that what Shaitan is throwing is in the hearts of the listeners. And that makes much more sense, because every prophet, basically what the verses are saying, is that every prophet, when they are hopeful of trying to convey the message to the audience, every prophet, their hope is what? Their hope is the people, right? Their wish is the people. They want them to be guided. So when a prophet is setting his face, with hope, trying to guide the people in front of him, Shaitan throws into their hearts different things. Right. Shaitan throws into their hearts different things. But then Allah will abolish what Shaitan throws into their hearts, and then he will make he will make the verses which the prophet is reciting clear for the audience, right? But it depends. Of course, there are some of the audience who have diseases in their hearts, right? And so those who have diseases in their hearts, when shaitan throws into their hearts, that finds, it's like a seed being thrown into soil. It grows, right? And it grows and it becomes a fitna for them, right? So that's why the verse says, ليجعل ما يلقي الشيطان فتنة للذين في قلوبهم مرض والقاسية قلوبهم. So that Allah make the what shaitan throws the fitna in the hearts of those in whose hearts is a disease and those who are hard-hearted. And then it says after that, وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكَ. And so that the people who have received knowledge, these are people who don't have diseases in their hearts. And when shaitan throws into their hearts, God abolishes that and allows his signs to stand firm, and so that they come to know that it's a truth from their Lord. Right? So I mean, I've got also a Twitter thread on this. But if you go to the which live stream was it? I'm trying to find it now.
I actually follow you on Twitter as well, so I keep up with it.
Yeah, it's there, and let me try to find where it is here. Which number was it? I'm not sure which one it is, because there are some of my notes which unfortunately got corrupted and lost. Which one was it? I'd have to actually just go to the YouTube channel and try and find it that way. Let me try and find it that way really quickly. If I just search Quranic Islam and Satanic verses.
I think I can find that when I remember which video it was.
No. I wish there was a way to just search your own channel on YouTube, but there doesn't seem to be a way to do that. Maybe I can do it from my studio and do one more quick search. Yeah, you can do it from things, Satanic verses. Yeah, the Satanic verse. So it's number 46.
46, right?
Number 46, yes.
Okay.
All right. So number 46, if you go to that, that's where...
Yeah, I found it. It's the Satanic verses. I'm number 46.
Yeah. So it's explained it much more better than I did here. Over there.
It's okay. I regularly go back to watch some of your older streams as well, so just learn. Just nice.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting. I mean, it's obviously what seems to have happened is that just somebody made up they looked at these verses, they didn't understand them, and so they made this mythical story up of shaitan throwing verses into the Qur'an and the Prophet not knowing, and then all the Meccans frustrated because in those verses the Prophet had praised the idols, etc. Right? So it's obviously been made a story which I think was concocted with these verses in mind. Right? Somebody made up these, because the verses of course came first. They're true. They happened. They were recited. And later on, somebody made up this story and tried to make it so it would fit with these verses in Surah Al-Hajj.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yes. Right. I have one last question before I go. It's about this, like, I think I read like a Reddit post about it, right? Like it was like the Qur'anic challenge, or like something like to produce a surah like it. Yeah. I would like to know like what the purpose of this is really. I read your post about it, right? But I feel like I could get a little bit more insight. I didn't seem to understand it
Yeah, so it's often misunderstood to be a challenge about eloquence, right? Um, it's basically just saying that that nobody is going to be able to produce a surah like the Quran, right? And the idea behind that is, of course, every author has something unique about them. Okay, every author has something sort of unique about them in some way. Okay, but because we are all human, we are still able to imitate what is unique about each other, right? So you see that in all forms of art, in all forms of
Yes.
whatever it is, right? So somebody you could have right now a competition of people making, for example, plays, right? Like theatre plays. You can
Right.
have a competition of people making plays like William Shakespeare, right? And you can have another competition of people making plays like Oscar Wilde. And of course, they're going to be different. You're going to tell me that it's subjective, and you have to, it's going to be just completely subjective. Which one is like which? No, if you can, the people who are able to make a play, a good playwright, who makes a play like those of William Shakespeare, is going to make something completely different from somebody who tries to make a play like those of Oscar Wilde, because they're very different. They have completely different tones. Okay. Um, so the idea is that we are able to imitate each other, right? That's why we have genres of different sort of music, right? Music, or or novels, or fantasy. All of these things, you end up having people imitating. Somebody creates a new bit of art, and others start to imitate, like cubism. Like for example, Pablo Picasso, and his
Yes.
form of art, which is very strange. You've got these sharp angles, and it looks like a child drew them, right? But no, it's called cubism now, and people can now do cubist art, and people can do impressionism, right? Art in art. You can have architecture, which is Art Deco. You can have architecture, which is Gothic. So we are
Right.
able to imitate. Okay, and the idea is that God, because He's completely different from us, He's completely unique. We cannot imitate Him. We are not able to imitate God Himself, right?
Right.
And so if the Quran comes from God, it will not be possible for us to imitate it. And that's why the Quran says that even if all of mankind came together, and all of the jinn as well, all of them together and helped each other, they would not be able to produce something like the Quran. Okay, because God is completely different from us. We are not able to imitate Him. So that's the idea behind it, and it's not about being the most eloquent thing. The Quran is not the most eloquent thing possible. Okay, it's not at the peak of eloquence at all, because it's not intended to be that. But wanted the Quran to be easy, to be simple, to be accessible for people, right? That's why its vocabulary is shockingly low. The Quran has a very, very its vocabulary register is very, very low, right? Especially if you just take the last two juz, put them on the side, then the rest of the Quran has such poor vocabulary, in terms of like frequency of words, right? A lot of the new words, or the amount of vocabulary that appears in the Quran, there's a big portion of it that just comes from the ending, from the last couple of juz in the Quran, where you have the shorter surahs, the more like poetic surahs. Those ones have a lot more extra vocabulary.
Yeah.
The rest of the Quran doesn't at all. Right? It's very simple, very low vocabulary, because that's what it's supposed to be. Right? وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. We made the Quran easy for dhikr. Yeah, so exactly. So because of that, it's not about eloquence. When we say when the Quran is challenging people to make a surah like it, it's not saying make a surah as eloquent as the Quran, right?
Yeah.
You can make something as eloquent as the Quran, and it will still not be like the Quran.
Yeah.
It's talking about try to make a surah which will fit within the pages of the Quran, just like the rest of the Quran. And that's why almost every single attempt at creating a surah like the Quran that I've seen, it just it doesn't get this basic point, right? And even some people who try to explain that there's that a surah like the Quran must fulfill these conditions or whatever, they bundle it so badly. I mean, you've got that YouTube channel, Qur'anic, not Qur'anic Arabic, but 101. I don't know the channel, but there's a channel pretty famous. where you have this Egyptian guy. He speaks decent English with a bit of an accent, but you know, his style is having like this sort of like blackboard background, and he explains different things. He has something. He has a video about that where he's saying, you know, because some people created a surah which he said is like the Quran, and the surah it's nothing like the Quran at all, right? But it's just been recited in the way like the Quran has been recited. But
Right.
he then goes on to say that no, to fulfill the Quran's challenge, you must create a new genre, right? If you create a new genre, it's not going to be like the Quran. Of course, it doesn't mean that, right? He's trying to say that in all of the ways that the Quran innovated things, they made things different. Then when you make your surah, it must be in the same way. But if you do that, then it's not going to be like the Quran. I mean, it's such a I feel very, you know, uneducated take, let's say, that you will tell people that the way to fulfill the challenge of the Quran is to make something not like the Quran. That's essentially what he says. You have to make something completely new, completely different to the Quran, and then you would have fulfilled the challenge of the Quran. Well, the Quran's challenge isn't for you to make something completely new that has never appeared before, a new genre of Arabic. That's not it. It's to create something like the surah of the Quran that would fit in with the Quran. Right? There could be, just like they say Muhammad created 114 surahs of the Quran, you make one more. Make one more. Okay, so that's the idea behind the Quran's challenge.
It's interesting. What is like the traditional narrative view about this?
And the traditional view about it is that nobody will be able to make something as eloquent as the Quran. The Quran is at the peak of eloquence, and that's basically it.
Oh,
Right? I mean, they include other things. For example, some people would say that knowledge of the past, or you know, like the Quran, you know, you'll never be able to have accurate knowledge of the past like the Quran. Some people have changed it into a miracle, you know, by the numerical signs in the Quran, that you will not be able to have numerical signs. But you know, all of that doesn't work because not every surah, the Quran is talking about creating one surah like it, and the numerical signs of the Quran are not in every not there's you don't have every single surah which has its own numerical signs, okay, and not every surah has, you know, knowledge of the past or predictions of the future or these sort of things. They're not in every single surah, right? So you need to, when you talk about creating a surah like the Quran, it has to be something which is the common denominator across all of the surahs of the Quran. Okay, so you can't reduce it to any of these things.
right.
Yeah. Even eloquence, you know, you could say there are some surahs which are more eloquent than others, right? Not all of them are at the same level, because you know, eloquence is often also a function of the subject matter that you're discussing, right? So there are some subject matters that lend themselves more towards eloquence and beauty than others do, right? You know, the verses which list the, you know, the inheritance laws or who you can and can't marry, you're not going to put them say that they are at the height of eloquence, you know.
Right. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is the point was like when you were talking about like certain surahs like having like this eloquence, like they're not held to that standard, and some like that is immeasurable, right? I always like to like think like this challenge. It's like none of us can produce it, right? Like I read like the post you post in Reddit, right? You said like we can try, but we will fail, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the whole point of it. The whole point of it isn't that we will fail by a little bit as well. The idea behind the Quran's challenge is it will be so clear that we failed that will not even be so, you know, people who say, you know, who's going to judge this, and according to who's the you know, who judges it. Well, first of all, the Quran tells you the criteria is that it should be like the Quran. That's the criteria. Then it says, you know, bring your own judges. It tells those people who are in doubt, because it's really this Quran's challenge is for those who are doubting, that you can bring your own witnesses, your own experts, your own judges, right, to decide if this surah is like the Quran or not, right? It's not the idea. It's not any more subjective than any other thing where people judge a work, right? You have now poetry competitions. You have, what's called the Pulitzer Prize for the best, novel or the best science fiction work. You have all of these things where people actually rank and judge different works. Okay, and so that can be done there as well. But the idea with the Quran is that it will be the difference between a surah of the Quran and anything else we can produce will be like the difference between seeing a Formula One car racing and a Honda Civic going at its top speed, right? You'll be able to see clearly the difference, right? There will be no doubt as to which one is like what, So, it's like saying, you've got 114 Formula One cars racing, okay, and you try to make one like it, and you end up making the most you'll be able to do is make a Toyota Camry or, a Nissan Sunny or a Honda Civic, and the difference is clear, right? It will not be a small difference. It will not be like, oh, maybe not. No, the idea is that there will be a wide gulf between the surahs of the Quran and any surah that you are able that you make. Okay, there will be a huge gulf between them.
Right. Yeah. That's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I think I have no questions now, so I hope hopefully there's someone else in backstage. But I'm glad. I learned a little bit, and I'll be checking the video or the Satanic Verses stream. Actually, yes, because to learn a little bit.
number 46, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have it up here, so.
All right. Brilliant. Okay.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Anytime. Assalamu alaikum. Because Sam was backstage, but I guess he had to go. Check the chat. Maybe he'll be back later. Anyway, let me bring in Odim. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm pretty nervous. It's my first time here. I've been watching your streams for a while.
No problem. It's fine. How are things? Where are you from?
I'm Tunisian, from Tunisia. Yeah.
All right. MashaAllah.
Yeah, but I'm based in Canada so far.
Okay.
And
Brilliant.
my concern is recently because I've had this dilemma regarding the political aspect of Islam. The concept of a Sharia law or a divine political system sent down from God.
Yeah.
And I struggle to find a coherent system in the Quran of Sharia law. And from where I grew up, it's like anyone who denies a Sharia law is a kafir or like an infidel.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that, just so I can understand?
Yeah, I mean, so there's no such thing as a Sharia, like you said. There's nothing like a Sharia law in the Quran, right? So the Quran doesn't really give us laws, right? We really make the laws ourselves, right? It's not concerned with us creating a certain law, right, or any kind of system for rulership, right? It doesn't promote kingship or democracy or this or that or the other, really. Okay. You have verses and places where where kings are mentioned, and it's not sort of like rejected as something bad, right? You can have righteous kings, and you have other places where it seems to promote a kind of like وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ, and their affairs are made by mutual consultation. So that seems to like sort of mention a kind of democracy, but there's no any kind of like political system. There's no law system that's been given in the Quran, right? It does give certain guidelines, certain things that people have taken to be, you could call them their laws. But I've come to see them much more as being, more to do with the society at the time around the Prophet, about establishing things like, like the whole, laws like cutting the hands of the thief. Okay, these things were applicable there because they didn't have, for example, the infrastructure of prisons, right? Didn't have these sort of things for which to, if there had been prisons, you would find probably in the Quran, prison sentences for certain things. So there isn't any. When the Quran talks about Sharia, right, it talks about Sharia wa minhaja, and it talks about how every people, they have been given a Sharia and a minhaj, right? So this is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, one of the last surahs to be revealed. And it says every people have their own Sharia, have been given a Sharia minhaj. And so what are we supposed to do? Make all people one? No. Because that verse literally says, if Allah had wanted, He could have made all of us to be a single ummah, right? So Sharia seems to be what distinguishes one ummah from another, right? So the verse says, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْكَ. So this verse comes after the discussions about the Torah and the Injil, right? So saying that, we sent to Musa the Torah, and in it we enjoyed that, a life for a life, and an eye for an eye, a nose for a nose, ear for an ear, and those sort of laws. That was part of the Torah, right? That was sort of things which were prescribed within the Torah. Then after that, it talks about the Injil that was sent to Isa. The Injil was given to Isa, and it talks a little bit about that. And then it says, وَلِيَحْكُمْ, let the people of the Injil judge by what Allah has revealed in it, and whoever doesn't judge by what Allah has revealed, they are the fasiqun. And then at the end, it talks about how we have been given, when the Prophet has been given the kitab afterwards. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. Making sort of like tasdeeq, making verifying what came before it, okay, min al-kitab, or what is in front of the kitab, and as a guardian over it, right? And then it says the Prophet, so judge between them by what Allah has revealed, right? And don't follow their ahwa. And here's the key part. It says لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. To each of you we have given a shir'ah and a minhaja. Okay, and that's the closest thing that we have to Sharia in the Quran. Every people have been given a shir'ah and a minhaja. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. And if Allah had wanted, He could have made you one ummah, one nation. Okay? What does that mean? That He could have given us all one Sharia, right? But it isn't the case. So Sharia seems to be, it's part of what distinguishes one ummah from another. So the people of the Injil have a Sharia. The people of Musa have a Sharia. The people of the Torah. And us, the people of the Quran, have a Sharia. Okay? A Sharia and a minhaja. Right? A minhaj seems to be like a way, or sort of like the spiritual way. Okay? Different ways of doing things. So for example, like, how we pray, the times that we pray, these sort of things, to be more about minhaja, right? About how we conduct ourselves. Whereas the Sharia could be seen more as like some of the outline laws, right, that we have, which are different from others, right? So Sharia seems to be something which is unique, divides, from ummah to ummah. And if Allah had wanted, He could have had one Sharia for all of humanity, right? But that isn't the case, and He doesn't want that, right? That's what the verse says. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِيمَا آتَاكُمْ. But He wants to test you or try you by that which He has given you. So we are being tested by what we have been given, and other ummahs are being tested by what they have been given. Okay? And the punchline of all of that, it says, فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Just seek out goodness, right? Race each other towards goodness. It is exactly what you said. I mean, trying to find a sort of a Sharia law in the Quran, it's an exercise basically in futility, because it isn't there. Quran has a few things which it mentions, a few outlines which it gives, but generally, laws are what we make. We will make the laws, right? And we'll try to do it with some insight into the Quran. And I think also we should do it with a recognition that some of the things which are revealed in the Quran are part of the kitab for the ummiyin, So kitab in the Quran really means the prescriptions, right? I would say the laws, right? Kutiba alaykum, kutiba alaykum. Some of them are more universal, right? Like fasting. Fasting has been prescribed for us, like it was prescribed to those before us, right? So it's always been prescribed. Fasting is something which was prescribed. But then there are other things which were, for example, in the Injil, there's no prescription for fighting, right? The Injil of Isa had no prescriptions for fighting. It had the opposite. It says if somebody slaps you, turns the other cheek. That was sort of like the idea with the Injil, right? That was part of the Kitab there. Whereas for us, we were given permission to fight, right? كتب عليكم القتال وهو كره لكم, right? Fighting has been prescribed for you, even though you detest it. So that's part of the Kitab as well. كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى. كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت. It's been prescribed to you that when one of you comes close to death, that you make a wasiyah. These are all things which are prescribed, right? They're part of the Kitab. Okay. So that's what I would say of that. We have certain things which are the Kitab, and some of those things are going to be more unique for the Ummiyin, right? والذي بعث في الأميين رسول منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. And he was to teach them the Kitab and the Hikmah, the prescriptions and the Hikmah. So that's why, for example, the Quran doesn't have, the 5 daily prayers and things like this, right? These things were taught by the Prophet to his people, right? He gave them the 5 daily prayers. He gave them these prescriptions as well. This is part of his function. It was also to teach them prescriptions, right? And so some of the prescriptions which are from him or in the Quran, some of them are more unique, I think, for the situation of the Arabs, for his own people. We're not expected to take them directly and use them now, right? We could, right? They are still just, right? But we could have other ways of doing it. And the goal in the end is justice. The goal in the end, no matter what it is justice. All of the books and all of the messengers, they were sent لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ, so that mankind could establish justice. And we are able to understand justice, to strive for it, to try to aim for it. And we can see clearly when something is unjust versus just. And there's a middle ground in between, of course, where you try to that's why you need wisdom, right? And why a wise person, somebody with hikmah, is somebody who's able to make the precise hukum, the precise judgment for a certain situation, right? He's able to weed out, this very delicate balance between, the borderline between justice and injustice. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
That's good to know, because just a follow-up question regarding because I've been watching recently a lot of these da'wah videos and the concept of da'wah, and they always keep mentioning Sharia and how it's the best system overall in every scenario, in every. And
I mean, they mean by that, of course, they mean the Sharia. When they talk about Sharia, all of these, they're talking about their sect, right? So of course, every sect or every madhab tries to codify Sharia, right? So in Islam we don't have in traditional Islam there's no one Sharia, right? There's the Maliki madhab is a Sharia, right? It's not really a Sharia. It's an attempt. The way they will describe it is this: that there's a Sharia or a law with God. God has this perfect law, right? And every madhab is trying to get to that. They're trying to mirror that on earth. Okay, so each one is attempting to be a copy of the actual Sharia. So the Maliki madhab is trying to be a copy of the actual Sharia. That's in Allah. That's with Allah. The Hanafi madhab is trying to be a copy of the actual Sharia, right? But all of these are not really Sharias. So it's just part of the pop Islam preacher way of speaking, right? That they will call the madhabs, the corpus of the fiqh, right? The laws that they have, they will call that a Sharia. But in actuality, the scholars themselves of these different madhahib, of the Maliki, Shafi'i, they will say that no, what we have here is an attempt to reflect the actual Sharia, which is with God. But the Sharia of Allah is with him. There are some things which they will say that we all have, everybody agrees upon is part of that Sharia. Okay, like for example that that nafs bin nafs, that you cannot kill somebody if they have not killed or caused some immense corruption on the earth, right? That you can that the murderer can be killed. You could say that as part of God's Sharia, right? The Sharia that we have been given, the Muslim Ummah. But the rest of it, the whole corpus that they have when they talk about, the Sharia is the best law of everything. No, they're really talking about their madhab, right? They're talking about the fiqh of their madhab from within the sect of Islam.
Right. Yeah. And so that makes sense. And I've noticed recently, do you think the Quran, the concept of da'wah itself, this idea of trying to bring in as much people, like getting as many people to say the Shahada as possible, how is the way it's done, I feel is sort of like point-wise, like, oh, I got this many people to convert to Islam, or whatever I think Islam is, my sect. So what do you think is the best way of doing da'wah? Or is it just like having people read the Quran for themselves?
I don't think that there's this kind of like this idea of da'wah in terms of like trying to get converts. First of all, I don't believe in this idea of conversion anyway, right? You make a shahada and you've become a Muslim, right? I think it's a tawbah to Islam, right? Then becoming Muslim or is a tawbah, right? It's a repentance. It takes time, right? It's not something you just you say these words and khalas, that's it. You're Muslim and all your past sins are forgiven. No, it isn't that way at all, right? Even once you've taken the shahada is an important thing if you take it as actually a shahada, right? What is shahada? It's witness. It's bearing witness. It's the Christians have actually a much better concept of that because they talk about their testimony, right? I'm going to give my testimony, and then they will give their story of how they became Christian and then they're testifying to the truth of Christianity or to the saving grace of Jesus, or whatever it is, right? They're given an actual testimony, right? And then they try to live according to that testimony, that this changed my life, and now I am going to be a living testament to the power of Jesus or whatever, right? In my life. That's a better idea, right? When you talk about shahada, when the Quran talks about the shahada, الذين هم بشهادتهم قائمون, those who with their shahada they are keeping it up, right? So to be of the shuhada is a big thing, right? The Quran talks about الصديقين والشهداء, right? The sort of like the verifiers and the shuhada. So I don't want to belittle shahada, right? And when somebody is actually testifies outwardly by saying the words of the shahada, but more importantly, now they are testifying to something which is true, right? It's become part of them. That is of course a huge thing, right? To make that sort of testimony, to testify for Allah, right? Shahada lillah, that's what it really is. It's not a shahada for the madhab or shahada for conversion or shahada for this, that, or the other. It's not just saying a phrase and that's it. It's actually testifying to what we have, right? And have that be part of your life. Your life should also be a testimony to that. So this idea of just of saying shahada and you've converted and that's it. No, you have to also make a tawbah, right? It's making a whole tawbah, and then once that is, it's not just Qur'anically, it's not just that your past deeds are forgiven. When you've done that kind of tawbah, which could take years, your past deeds actually turn to good deeds, right? It's not just your past is forgiven; it's changed into good deeds. Okay, I mentioned a lot of this in the I think the first live stream, which has a picture of it, was when what's his name, Andrew Tate, when he apparently converted, right? And I had a lot of questions about it because at the time when he converted, it split the Muslims into two. There were some who were saying, yes, we must accept him, that's it, he's become Muslim, all of his past is forgiven. And others were saying, no, I mean, this guy used to he was a sex trafficker, he did this, and this. It's not right that somebody could just say shahada and then that's it, and everything of their past is forgiven. And that's the truth of it, right? You don't say shahada and everything in the past is forgiven. You say shahada and then you're making a tawbah. Your shahada should be a tawbah, and that includes trying to right the wrongs of your past. Okay, so when it comes to actually da'wah, the way I view da'wah is you're supposed to be making da'wah to guidance. It's not towards the religion, right?
Okay.
You can actually make da'wah towards Christians to encourage them to practice Christianity better. I mean, the Quran makes that kind of da'wah to them. It says, وَلْيَحْكُمْ أَهْلُ الْإِنْجِيلِ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. Let the people of the Injil establish what Allah has sent down to them, right? And it says, Ya قُولْ يَا أَهْلُ الْكِتَابِ, say, O Muhammad, the Prophet has been told to say to them, لَسْتُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ حَتَّى تُقِيمُوا التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. You have nothing until you actually establish the Torah and Injil and what Allah has sent down to you from the Lord. There's also da'wah, right? It's not da'wah to convert, it's da'wah towards the guidance, okay, whatever it is. So that's what I would say. The da'wah needs to be more about trying to spread the guidance which is in the Quran, the guidance which Allah has revealed to us, and just guidance generally, even if it's just the human guidance that you know from your own fitrah, right? That's also part of da'wah, right? So guiding da'wah towards guidance, right? And of course, there's da'wah as in da'wah towards Allah Himself, right? To have people to have faith in Allah, right? Now, of course, we live in a time where people have lost faith in God, right? So making a da'wah for people to have more faith in God, faith in the future, faith, that justice will be done against against the unjust and for the victims. These sort of things, giving da'wah so people have, to bring people closer to Allah and bring Allah closer to people, right? This can also be part of da'wah. It doesn't all have to be towards converting them, and then more often than not they're dropped, right? People they do their shahada, Allahu Akbar, takbir, have it in the mosque, and then after that, and these people are left alone to figure things out. There's a nice YouTube channel now, which every once in a while comes up in my feed. What's his name? Where it's basically a lot of revert stories, a lot of convert stories, done by this American guy, Canyon something. I forget what it is. Canyon Mims. Is that it? Canyon Mims? Yeah, I think that's it.
Mims
Canyon Mims Show. Yeah. And he does a lot of interviews with people who tell their revert stories, and all the time that one of the recurring things which he mentions himself, and I haven't watched that many, but he's mentioned that it's a recurring thing that these people that a lot of us converts, we convert, right? There's a lot of effort put into our conversion, and then after the conversion, we're sort of forgotten about, right? And nobody's out there helping us. We have to figure things out ourselves, learn how to pray ourselves. That happens a lot, right? And it's just like you said, because people are trying to convert others for points, essentially, right? They're trying to do points and get reward of Allah and these sort of things, rather than trying to bring them closer to guidance. I mean, it's sort of interwoven in their minds, but that's what's happening, right? They think that once the person has said their shahada, sort of the job is over. But it takes a lot to change your previous life. That's why, again, becoming Muslim is supposed to be a tawbah, right? It's not that easy. You don't just say the shahada and that's it. Even if you were to say that all of your past sins are forgiven, well, your past character isn't changed automatically, right? You don't suddenly become a different person. You have to grow and seek out the virtues more and more, and improve yourself more and more, remove your vices more and more, accept, gain more and more faith, become more and more trusting, and seek out more and more, development in yourself.
Yeah, it's a pattern I saw a lot in terms of just recent abandonment. Even the bait and switch regarding Quran Hadith, the converts the Quran to get them in, and then once they're in, they sort of bombard them with these extra things that they never heard of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the wisest converts are very sort of they realize that, right? But unfortunately, a lot of converts, no, they don't, and they're very trusting towards the people who have helped guide them, so to speak. And so they start. What happens as soon as they've converted? What one of the first things they're told. That's why it's one of the first videos of Hassan Farhan Malik, which I translated, was the whole saved sect hadith, right? So they spent all this time, you tell them about the Quran, how miraculous it is, how this and this and this. Once they've converted, I say, oh, by the way, that the Prophet said that this ummah would divide into 73 sects, all of them in hell except one. So brother, we need to know which is that right one. And he said the right one is the one which me and my Sahaba are upon. And so now you have that hadith is used as a hook to draw them into the sect, right? Into that specific sect, and then just goes on and on from there. Yeah, it's exactly a bait and switch, exactly what you said.
Yeah, and that's great to know. And just one last question. That's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the most recurring topics regarding the purpose of an individual in the Quran is the support of orphans. Like there's taqwa, and I think a means to that is the support of orphans, right? Orphans. But I want to know your opinion regarding the charities, like what we know now as charities, because I'm very skeptical in sort of just giving money to these because much of the money just goes to this administration.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that as well. I mean, this is more like a personal opinion and stuff. I mean, I would want to discourage people from because even if you give in charity, right, and you've done it with the right intentions, I mean that is something which is going to be beneficial to you no matter what, right? But of course, we want it to actually. The whole point is to actually benefit, and the people who want to be benefited, who actually want that to have an impact, right? And I'm like you, I'm very, very skeptical of these things. My sister has worked with some of these charities, and it's crazy the amount of money that the charity organization itself soaks up. That the head of the charity, how much they soak up, right? People, six-figure salaries, and they are and bonuses as well, and they're supposed to be a charity. But I think there are organizations which vet different charities and give them a score about how much of their money go ahead, and you have charities which have 100% donation policy. You have all of these things. I would say mostly try to do things locally at first, right, as much as possible. I think as I say, charity starts at home. Do things in your locally as much as you can. You're right. You can have orphanages nearby and places like that where you can actually donate. And the smaller the organization, the people that you know more, I think it's usually much more trustworthy. I mean, there's what's his name, Muhammad from God, right? He's probably the most popular Qur'anist YouTuber, right? He has a foundation or a charity organization where they do a lot of charity for orphans in Gaza, and they set up an orphanage in where was it? I think it was Rwanda. I forget where it was. And they set it up and they tried to have it done properly and everything. And even then, the person over there on the ground was stealing the money, right? Muhammad had to go down there and actually sort out the mess and try to, get back the money and make sure it went to the orphans properly, to the setup of it, to the payment of the schooling, all of that sort of stuff. So even then, I mean, it is. What can you do? I mean, you just try to do your best, try to vet as much as you can, and then give where you can.
Yeah, I think I saw that case on Reddit because it's posted on Reddit. Yeah, because I follow a subreddit there, and another like crazy thing I've heard many Muslims say is that there's like sort of hierarchy of orphans, like tier list. Like the Muslim orphans are worth giving to, but like the Kafir orphans are worth everything to. Like it's a waste to give them money, or so forth.
Yeah, it's just so bad. My God.
Right? It's like they it's like, why didn't you give money to a Palestinian? Why did you give to this like American orphan? You know, like
Yeah. That's just so bad. I mean, subhanAllah. No, I mean, every orphan is worthy. Not one is not more worthy just because they're Muslim. I mean, at that age, most of these children, they're not going to know. I mean, what fault of it is theirs,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
SubhanAllah. But unfortunately, that's what it is. You've got these tribal instincts and these dogmatic views where, again, it's just got to do. It comes down to, like you said, this sort of like point scoring, right? And there's more points to be had from a Muslim orphan than a non-Muslim orphan. No, I mean, try to give to the one who's most in need, right? The one who's most need. The one who doesn't have as many people trying to give to them. The one who who doesn't have, who can't. There's not going to be as much support for them growing up. You want to give it to the people who are most in need.
yeah, and yeah. So that's something I'm focusing on, sort of like figuring out a way to help, because it's the most common like promoted good deed in the Quran, I think.
It is definitely heavily promoted. I mean, hugely promoted. I mean, it's part of ihsan, part of being from the muhsinin. There are verses which basically have that as one of the, you have in the Quran different lists of things that you can do for which you are promised Jannah, right? And it appears in some of these lists, like in Surah Al-Balad, it's mentioned there, right? أو يتيما ذا متربة, feeding an orphan who is destitute, right? I mean, that's what that verse says, يتيما ذا متربة, not يتيما ذا Islam. Yatim of Islam, Yatiman, who is like in the dust, who's like really suffering, right? And you're giving to them even on the day where you yourself need, okay, where you yourself are having hardship, but then you give even on that day to this orphan who is in the dust.
Yeah, and I think also in Surah Al-Ma'un, Wailul Musallin has to do with orphans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
الذي يدعو اليتيم.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's sort of the opposite of Salat. Like if you're against the orphan, or like if you withhold from that, you're sort of anti-Salat.
Yeah. I mean, I did a whole what's it called, a video essay on that surah, right? A couple of them actually. Yeah, we're one of the first on this channel, if I remember, but it was all about just that surah. It was a very remarkable surah.
I have to watch a lot of your video essays. Do you plan on making more in the future?
I do. I mean, right now, the last, was it how many years? I haven't, just because work and family, and homeschooling kids. My kids and a baby, had a baby, and so I couldn't get back to that. But I do plan on getting back to it within a few months. I'm going to actually I'm actually going to be trying to. I'm going to be changing circumstances, so I might be trying to spend about 6 to 9 months doing YouTube full time, maybe a little bit more, depends, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah, we'll see.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. It's been an honor.
No problem, anytime. Jazakallah khair. What's your name, my friend?
Ahmed.
Jazakallah, Ahmed. Take care.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
All right, that was Ahmed from Canada. Could you recommend a charity organization? I would there are a couple which I suppose I could recommend. DM me, maybe I'll send you the links to them and stuff. But again, I mean, I like to what people who I know who are working on things, so I could definitely recommend Muhammad from God, who's he's got the Believers Foundation. I don't know if it's his as well, but he's certainly working on it, and donating through that, I think is very very commendable. I could recommend that. All right, one more. Let's bring Dragonlight. Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Assalamu alaikum.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Excellent.
Also, I wanted to talk about, I wrote about this in the Telegram. I wanted to talk about like the sellouts, like that we see today.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen some of the posts? I want to talk about that for a bit.
Which posts?
They kind of want to change the Qur'an, like the wording of the way things are worded.
Oh, you mean the linguistic revisionists, right?
Yeah.
I mean those, right? Who try
Yeah.
to yeah. I mean those. I mean, I wouldn't call them sellouts. I think that a lot of them just have this cognitive dissonance. Some of them have that. Some of them just have this revulsion to anything which is traditional, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them just have this idea which just doesn't work, that you can learn the Arabic language from the Quran. You can't learn the Arabic language from the Quran. Okay? It's not like that, right? You can't learn a whole language from a single book. Okay, it just can't be done. There are certain keywords in the Quran which are important for you to understand Quranically, because they are keywords in the Quran. Right? They are like that. But other words are not.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to use roots and this and that the other to work out a whole language, right? And so when it ends up happening, they just have this distrust of Arabic language. They think, no, the Arabic of the Quran is completely different to what people have understood in Arabic, not just for now, but for the last 1,000, 200, 300 years from when the Arabic dictionaries got codified and written down. Okay, so they think that after the Quran, a few in the space between the Qurans being sent down and the and the Arabic language sort of being like written down in dictionaries and grammar books and all of that, in that space that the Arabic language changed. Okay, and there's just no evidence for that at all. Right? There's no evidence for that at all.
Well, I think I'm more interested. You continue.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And like the people who are talking about the 434, the verse. Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean exactly. I'm like daraba, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that one is a very interesting one, because the actual everybody knows that linguistically in that verse there's no reason linguistically for it to not mean strike or hit. There's no reason at all.
Yeah.
But everybody will concede that. The reasons given for interpreting it away from that are entirely philosophical, ethical, right? They have these other reasons. It can't mean hit because God will not say that. Okay, that's what it comes down to. And so if that's your philosophical reasoning, or you have this ethical position with it, I mean, I can understand that, right? But then you can't turn around and say that you have a linguistic reason for denying that it can mean hit. There's no linguistic reason. Right?
Yeah.
There's no linguistic reason.
I think it's actually from sexism, and like against guys, not even girls. I think it's because if it said beat men, nobody would say anything about it. Like it's nothing to be said about it ever.
No, I mean, I don't think it's so much that even. I just think that it's something that everybody has taken as a given, right? That there can't be a good reason for that. That there's no benefit in it. That the God would never approve of that. That's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And these are principled stances which I can respect, right? In that sort of way, I can respect that somebody can have these sort of like, and if you don't understand if you can't see why this would benefit, why you know, it's a very logical thing to say that no, it just can't mean that, right?
Yeah.
So, but this also again where you have to sort of like accept what you are, you know, respect to God. You have to respect that you that not everything that you will understand it, you know,
Yeah.
and not everything you will understand at your current age, at your current level of knowledge, at your current, you know, there's some things that you can come to understand later, right? Me myself, for example, for that verse, for a long time I didn't get it, but I think the most important thing is just to have complete honesty with it, right?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, because if you try to bend yourself in a certain way, then all you're doing is damaging your own ability to be able to understand truth and recognize it, right? So when you try to bend yourself into believing something which doesn't seem right, okay,
Yeah.
then that will damage you. That will mean that
No,
later
honestly.
on, yeah, that means later on you have more difficulty being able to, you know, distinguish truth from falsehood, right? If you're
Yeah.
forcing yourself to believe something that you think is not true, you're forcing it a certain way, then that's damaging your perception, your ability to be able to see the truth for truth and falsehood for falsehood.
Yeah.
Which is why I can completely emphasize, empathize, and understand that principal's position, where they're saying no, this is wrong. Like God would never, command a husband to hit his wife. It's completely wrong, and you know that's how they honestly see it, and that's good, right? So
Yeah.
if that's how they honestly see it, there is no way which I want them to try to make themselves believe that God would. Okay, but at the same time, they shouldn't try to make themselves believe that the verse doesn't say what it says, right?
Yeah.
Because the Arabic is very clear. So where does that leave them? Well, that leaves you in a position where you just have to say, look, that's what the verse says. I don't believe God would command this, and I don't understand right now how these two things are reconciled. And so, you know, I'll take a step back from it. I'll leave it. In the future, maybe I will understand it. Maybe I will come to see it. But right now, you know, I don't see it. And what does that mean in practice? Well, in practice, you should never ever practice something which you don't understand, right? You can't go ahead and do something if you don't understand it, if you're not clear on it, right? Nor encourage it in others, nor anything like that. So you know, just and I've advised that before. Just leave it on the shelf. You don't have to have all of the answers all in one go. There are some things that you can say, okay, you know, I have enough faith in the rest of the Quran to have faith in God that there's something here which I don't get. But until I do, I will continue to say, no, this is wrong, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely fine.
You see, this problem is blown out of proportion like crazy for some reason. It's like in every post.
Well, yeah,
like,
I mean, no, it's because it's an issue it's an understandable issue, right? It's something which is affecting people's faith, and this is, I don't know, maybe because people put their faith, they establish their faith in something on these sort of things, so you know, if they shake, it shakes, right? You have to be wary of what you establish your faith upon, right? Because you know, if you establish it on the wrong thing, then if that thing,
wait, my thing is lagging. Hold on.
you're still there, right?
I'm back. Yeah, I was just.
No, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that happen with people who have, you know, who put their faith in. I mean, take for example the Sunni versus Shia debate and stuff there. So there are people who have their faith in the companions and this, and if they find out that if they ever even start to suspect that some of the great companions were hypocrites or were not so virtuous as they were, that would shatter their faith. Okay, that would shatter their faith. And that tells you what their faith is based upon. It's based upon not so much faith in God and His messenger and His books and the things which we're supposed to have faith in. No, it's some other things have become entangled with that. So now, if those things rock, it rocks your whole faith, right? I remember even when I met Mufti Abu Layth, right, he was saying a similar sort of thing, right? Where he's saying basically, if for all of these companions, if many of them were not as virtuous, were not so virtuous, then that basically is what does it say about the messenger himself, about the prophet, right?
Such
And
a
that's
weird thing.
That's the problem, right? If your faith in the messenger depends on the Sahaba being good.
Yeah, it
right?
doesn't make any sense.
If they're not, then you lose faith in the messenger. No, I mean, many prophets in the past had people who the closest people to them betrayed them or whatever, right? They weren't among the best, of people. So it's just normal, right?
Yeah. I don't know how people like reconcile like the pen hadith. Like, how do people reconcile that with their like the image of the companions being these good?
Which pen hadith?
Good. It's like when the prophet was dying and he wanted to write something so that they would never be misled.
Yeah. I mean, that has a specific situation, right? That was like the specific situation of the, of the prophet, trying to basically firm his decision of having Ali as the caliph after him.
Yeah.
Because after Ghadir Khum, he saw that people were still, but he did his duty on Ghadir Khum.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Omar, when he heard what the Prophet wanted to do, he knew what he wanted to have written down. So he wanted to have that stopped because, and again, you don't have to look at it in terms of like complete villainy, right? I think that my understanding of that is that Umar, he was actually happy, right? When you look at the narrations about Ghadir Khum, he was actually happy for Ali. He said to him, Bakhim, Ali, congratulations to you. You have become the Mawla of every believer, right?
Yeah.
He was happy, but later he saw what you can see in many narrations. After that point, he saw the reaction of Quraysh to that, right?
Yeah.
And he saw that if they had, if Ali were to become the caliph afterwards, the Quraysh would fight again. There would be a renewed war of Medina versus Mecca, and he didn't want that because that's what happened, of course. And most of the Arabs, not most of them, many, a huge number of the Arabs tribes, when the Prophet died, they apostated, right? They said, "Khalas, Muhammad is dead. That's it," right? And so Quraysh undoubtedly would have done that if Ali had become the caliph, right? They would have said, "No, khalas, we're not going to follow this anymore." And they were almost going to do it even normally, right? It was actually, according to some narrations, of course. I mean, this is the problem going into history, right? You're not sure if all of these things are true. But when the Prophet died, Mecca did actually seem to want to, throw away its allegiance. And it was actually, what's his name, Suhail, who got up and gave a khutbah to the people of Mecca and told them, look, you people of Mecca, you would have among the last to enter Islam, right? Do not be among the first to leave it as soon as Muhammad dies. And his speech there, let them stay, right? Otherwise, they were ready to be just like many of the other Arab tribes who abandoned Islam after the Prophet died.
Yeah.
Okay, but if it had been Ali who had become the caliph, then that would have been an even bigger reason for them not to, because of the rivalry that Quraysh, who are mostly represented by the Umayyads and Makhzumis, the rivalry that they had with Banu Hashim. Anyway, That's a whole other issue.
Yeah, did you see the fact that there was like a Israeli company that was just like meddling in all elections? It's like it came out last night that was
I didn't
happening.
see that. I didn't see that. No, but
It's called
yeah, I mean,
Black
it's not.
Core.
What's it called?
The company's called Black Core.
Yeah, I would. I could
It's kind
have
of
guessed something
eerie.
like that. Black
Yeah.
rock, black stone, black core,
Yeah,
or
it's
black
creepy.
water. You know the black water.
It's creepy as hell. Like the naming.
Yeah. What's the black water though? That
Black.
the,
Yeah, war
the
crimes.
mercenary,
Yep.
the mercenary group and stuff. You
They're
know,
called Academia
and
or
they're
something.
and they're all related to Israel.
Yep. It's creepy. Also, did you see the rock inscriptions that the Saudi Arabia said it had?
Yeah.
Came
I
out.
mean, there's a huge number of rock inscriptions. Yeah, there was,
No,
but
like,
I heard in
yeah,
passing
like,
that there's something that was published just yesterday, or when was it? What was it? Tell me.
نقش آخر. What is it? So نقش أنا الوليد مولى عبد الله ابن جعفر ذو الجناحين غفر ربي لي ورحمني.
I mean, I saw a post on the Muslim academics subreddit about some rocking inscriptions, but there are so many I've seen now. So many have been discovered over
Yeah.
it's over 1,000 different unique rock inscriptions have been shown all around Arabia.
Yeah.
Islamic, pre-Islamic, post-Islamic. There are so many. Some seemingly by Sahaba and companions, or their children or children's children. I think in one of the streams recently I showed a video of one of the most beautiful inscriptions. I think that was written by the grandson of Hassan, I think.
Yeah.
Right, and it was very beautifully written, inscribed, Naqsh, huge as well.
What was it about?
It was just basically him, making a shahada, right? Asking Allah to bless him, to forgive him, to keep him, make him close in the next life to Muhammad, as he has made him close in this life to him, because of his lineage, etc., etc. Making just dua for himself and for his family and for the rest of the believers, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I want to talk about another thing. The people who kind of try to like disprove the Qur'an by using the fact that Mecca didn't get destroyed.
The Mecca what? Sorry?
Didn't get like destroyed, you know what I mean?
Oh yes. There was actually a very nice brother. He actually used to come on the stream a lot, but he's become an ex-Muslim. And I saw and I had I saw him in passing.
Yeah, I saw the post.
You saw that, yeah? It was wasn't it? It was mostly it was a comment post, right?
Ryan Hard, I think that's his name.
Yeah, Ryan Hard, right. I forget what his name is on here, but and he sent me his a document that he's working on. I told him that later, inshallah, after a few months when I started sort of like do this channel full time, I asked him if he would like to come on and have sort of like not an interview, but a discussion. About all of that. But yeah, so he what was it? He said that the main thing, so he's ex-Muslim now, but he said the main thing was that he saw that that during the Meccan period, the Prophet was warning the Meccans that they will be destroyed just like the previous peoples were destroyed. And so we're talking about that kind of azab in those verses meant that sort of thing, right? The destruction that happened to Ad and Thamud and
I know what you mean,
etc. Right? And then he said, but then but then it didn't happen, right? And instead, because it didn't happen, it all had to be redone in the Meccan period. All the verses which talk about the azab and punishment, they had to be changed to mean military. So the punishment that the Meccans got ended up being military rather than destroyed. So basically, the argument is that if the Prophet had been truthful, then after the Prophet did hijrah, right, and left Mecca, that they should have been destroyed, just like in previous models, which are shown in the Quran,
Yeah.
that the people reject their messenger, and then they leave, and then those people get destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So that's what he's saying, that it didn't happen. So that just shows that it wasn't true, basically.
But the argument doesn't really make sense. It's like, how do I say? You know how like Prophet Musa, he actually fought. Like if you read in the verses, he did fight, and God only helped him when he was losing like hard against
Which
Pharaoh.
Musa?
Yeah, like it says when they were cornered in the verse that talks about the splitting of the sea, like when they were cornered. I don't remember which verse.
I don't think they fought. They didn't fight. But no. But for me, the issue is that his people didn't reject him, right?
Yeah.
So in the end, some of his people accepted him, right?
Yeah.
And this is basically like the model of Isa alayhi salam, right?
Yeah.
Which says what? What is it? Isa's in him it says, فَآمَنَتْ طَائِفَةٌ مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَكَفَرَتْ طَائِفَةٌ. That a group of Bani Israel had faith in him, believed in him, and a group didn't. So we supported the group who had faith in him against those who did not. And that's what happened with the Prophet Muhammad, because his people are not just the Meccans. Right? His people were certainly the Hijazis, and certainly Yemen, not Yemen, what's called the Medina, Yathrib, were part of his people. Right? The Prophet actually spent a lot of time in Yathrib even before the Hijrah. His grandmother was from there. Abdul Muttalib grew up in Yathrib, right? Hashim used to spend a lot of time there. His grandfather Hashim, because he married Selma in Yathrib, and they had Abdul Muttalib over there, right? And he used to go to. He was part of Bani Najjar on his mother's side over there. So Yathrib, the people of Yathrib are part of his people, right?
Yeah.
And so they accepted him, And when the Prophet used to come, when he never used to just preach to the Meccans only, he preached to all of the Arabs who came. At the point of Mecca is that it was the thing, it was the hub. So every year at Hajj, he would go to Suq Uqad, and he would actually preach to all the Arabs who came there, right?
Yeah.
And the Quran says, لِتُنذِرَ أُمَّ الْقُرَى وَمَنْ حَوْلَهَا, that you are to warn the mother of the cities, and all around it, everybody around it, right? And so to just say and narrow that funnel all of that down, that the Prophet Muhammad gave his, he was sent to the people of Mecca, and that's it, and they didn't accept, and then when he left, they should have been destroyed. No, that's not true. When he left, why did he leave? He left upon the invitation of Medina. Medina had basically all accepted Islam before he even went, right?
Yeah.
The bay'ah of the Aqaba, the first Aqaba, the second Aqaba, etc.
Yeah, and there were still good people in Mecca. That's the thing. That's why there was the treaty that.
You had the faith. You had the. Of course, you had some people who were hiding their faith, right?
Yeah.
But generally, he's right in terms of that the majority of them did not have faith, right? The Quran says, لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The majority, the qawl has gone out against the majority of them that they would not have faith, even though they would have Islam. They would not have Iman, but they would have Islam, the majority. And that was true about the Meccans. But the point is that yes, that the Arabs, they in the Aqaba, the first Aqaba and the second Aqaba, they pledged to take him in, and so he succeeded. The Prophet Muhammad didn't just have like his own group of followers, which he did hijrah away from, and then everybody else that he was sent to had all rejected him, and they were all destroyed. That isn't what happened, right? Like I said, it's more like the model of Isa, where some of them had faith and some did not. And so what did Allah do? Did he destroy those who did not? No, he supported those who had faith against those who did not. So that they became victorious, and that's what happened. Right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's, there's the thing about it, when people, I've spoken about this before, when it comes to Islam, it really comes down to a sense of trust. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was speaking to him about as well in that comment. I asked him, what is it? I asked him, okay, what was it that led you finally to leave Islam? And I told him, look, I wanted to know just because I don't want to have a debate, but I want to know because, you know, when I was investigating, Iman and Islam, Iman a long time ago, I used to listen to a lot of ex-Muslims because that's, what I could relate to, and, to try to understand, why is it somebody can have all of these issues with Islam but still have faith, and another person can have even less issues with Islam but lose their faith, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to, as I've said before, it comes down to trust. That's really the bottom line of it, right?
Yeah.
Once that trust is broken, it's very difficult to get it back as well.
Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult to get back a trust when it's been broken. And once it's broken, it sort of all collapses altogether, right?
Yeah, it's the foundation. You
You can't sort of like bring it back together. Like there's somebody who, there's this one extra thing which causes them to lose faith in Islam. If you were to then undo that one thing, it will not bring back his faith, right? If he was later to find out that one thing which caused him to leave Islam was not true, right? That will not make him go back into Islam because
his trust is broken.
Yeah, he will not rebuild that trust, right? So in the end, it's all about having you trusting the story of religion, pretty much. Every religion is given a story, and you will stay within that religion if you still accept, if you still trust in the story, the main story of it is true, right?
Yeah.
And so, what's the main story of Islam? It is that the Prophet Muhammad received the revelation from God, that the Qur'an is a revelation from God, right?
Yeah.
So once this guy, once his faith or trust in that was undermined, that's what caused the person to abandon Islam or leave Islam.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, that was good, bro. Thank you.
No problem. All right, bro. I'm gonna actually have to call it quits
get off as well.
Yeah, it's a bit late. Not sure if I would have loved to have watched the Brazil versus Morocco match, but
no, it's too late. 12 a.m. for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. It still starts. It starts in like I think in an hour.
Brazil
starts in around an hour or something. Anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. All right. I'd actually like to quickly look up the chat in case there's something somebody left for me. I saw this. There must be a sellout on people. Yep, I know. Have you heard about the Hegel's dialectic materialism? I was interested in joining a Marxist party, but their position is really negative, in my opinion. They see religion as a problem stemming from oppression. Okay, I've seen a yuck post on X about that one. About that one rabbi they make fun of, with that funny Israeli accent, how he explains how Shias are idolaters, etc., etc. Alright, this is what we spoke about before, right? Is the Sharia of Islam the true Sharia? No, I mean the Sharia I mentioned when we were talking about this earlier. Every people have been given their own Sharia. There's no true Sharia, right? Every people were given a Sharia and a minhaj. And we are supposed to strive or race each other towards goodness. What would you say if someone is doing da'wah, but instead of guiding is misguiding? I feel as though that is less common. I feel as though that is less common, to be honest. I could be wrong. Less common that people are misguiding instead of guiding. I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I think, of course, somebody who's misguiding instead of guiding, they're gonna have that's going to be on their shoulders as well. It's part of their responsibility. I mean, the Quran says, وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ يُضِلُّونَهُم بِغَيْرِ عِلْم, right? ليحملون أوزارهم كاملة يوم القيامة ومن أوزار الذين يضلونهم بغير علم, that they will carry upon their backs their own burdens and of the burdens of those whom they misguide without any knowledge. So it's it's a difficult thing, right? But the problem is too many people wish to rush into guiding others when they just have the flimsiest bit of knowledge. They learn a little bit, or because they're just so sure that they've grown up in the right religion, and so they think they can just guide how they want. So if people put their faith in tyrants like Muawiyah, then later find out that he was a hypocrite, would that shatter their faith as well? Yes, I think so, right? And you have people like that. I've had people who I've sort of spoken about them with these sort of things tell me that good people, good friends and stuff like that. There's one friend who said quite seriously, he got a bit vexed, but he said, you know what? Anybody who does not respect Abu Bakr and Umar and in to the highest level, that person is dead to me, and I cannot know. Now, it was such a strong reaction. I knew that this was somebody who this was just part of their faith, and to try to rock that would create an issue for them. And that's why, for example, I mean, getting back into the history a little bit, that's why the people who tried to kill to assassinate the Prophet on the way back from Tabuk, right? There were people who tried to assassinate the Prophet, and with him were Ammar and Hudhayfa, okay? And the Prophet told Hudhayfa who they were. I mean, they had covered their faces so they wouldn't be seen, but they tried to assassinate him, but eventually they couldn't. But the Prophet told Hudhayfa who they were, their names, but then he told Hudhayfa, but don't tell others who they are, right? Because there are sometimes there are people that can't take that kind of information, right? Because they themselves model their own iman according to those people, right? So there are some people who they see themselves in Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali, right? They see themselves in them, right? So their own iman is modeled according to them, right? They see themselves as being towards the Prophet as they were, right? And so if their faith, that's how they see their faith. That's how it's based. So if their faith in these individuals starts to shake, it really shakes their faith in the Prophet himself, because if these people didn't have such strong faith in the Prophet, maybe I'm wrong to do so as well. Okay. Khalid, you watching? Yes, I'm going to be watching the World Cup. Who am I rooting for? I'm not really rooting for anybody, to be honest. A little bit rooting for England just because it's England. It's where I've grown up. But I'm also sort of like rooting for Morocco. Would like Morocco. I definitely don't want the US to win. Sorry. So I was distraught when they won. What was it, 4-1 yesterday against Paraguay. Brazil, be happy if they won. If I was one team I would like to win, I would like probably Portugal to win, just because of I'd like Cristiano Ronaldo to actually win a World Cup, and maybe Spain as well, just because Spain has been amazing with Gaza. All right, okay, let's end it there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.